everyone, and welcome back to the podcast. I'm Stephanie Pellet. This is Slowpreneur, and I want to thank you so much for coming back and tuning in to another episode. This is where we talk about all things sustainable and intentional business. And today we're tackling one of the trickiest things when it comes to running your own business, which is marketing. We have all been there. We have this amazing offer or service or product, and yet how do we get it to the people who really need it? Where should we be showing up? How often should we be showing up? What should we be saying when we get there? These are all questions that myself and my clients have dealt with because, spoiler alert, marketing is not easy, which is why I'm really excited about the conversation that I'm bringing you today. We are talking to Amanda Laird of Slow and Steady Studio about intentional, customized marketing. I really loved talking to Amanda because one of her core tenets in her business is that marketing feels hard because it is hard, which counterintuitively makes it a lot easier because when we don't feel so discouraged by how hard it is to show up, we can actually show up with more intention. So Amanda's going to walk us through so many of the reasons why marketing really is so hard, which hopefully can give us more motivation to keep showing up. She also introduces us to her concept of just enough marketing, which I absolutely love and will be applying in my own business going forward. But this entire conversation is so full of great nuggets that I hope can inspire you to approach your marketing in a new and more customized way to you. So let's just get right into it. Here's my conversation with Amanda for Slowpreneur. Hi, Amanda.
Hi, Stephanie.
Thank you so much for being here. I am really excited to talk to you
Yeah,
today.
Me too. I'm so excited to be here. Thanks.
Yes. I mean, the name of your business kind of lends itself extremely well to being on Slowpreneur. Can you tell us a little bit about your business and you and the work that you do in the world?
Yeah, for sure. And I should say that I definitely listened to the Slowpreneur podcast as I was visioning and conceptualizing this business last year. So,
fun.
it's definitely influenced by the Slowpreneur lifestyle. So, Slow and Steady is a virtual marketing studio. And we support creative, solo, service-based entrepreneurs with marketing, mentorship, and strategy and support.
Yes. And you take a feminist marketing approach that's often in a lot of your content. Can you kind of briefly tell us what that means to you?
Yeah, well, I feel like that's an ever-evolving definition and an ever-evolving philosophy. But I'm incredibly influenced by the work of Jennifer Armbrust, who wrote a book, or she runs a business called Sister, and her book, Principles for the Feminine Economy. Another great book that I refer to all the time is the Business Birthing Handbook. And I learned a lot about feminine and feminist business principles through Sister. And that is, looking at not just being as a business owner, being a feminist. I mean, that's part of it, but then also embedding feminist values into your business. So your business practices, your business systems, and that really runs from like thinking about the vendors that you work with and where you're giving your money to and how you are working. And really, at the end of the day, it's taking a very human-centered approach to your business, centering yourself as the business owner, as a human first, before the business, and also the business foundations. So that's kind of where my business is built from. And then I also look at expanding that into marketing, right? So there's two sides, I think, to feminist marketing. I've looked for like a definition of feminist marketing. And if you do a Google search for feminist marketing, then you find a lot of stuff about like how to for like large brands to bring feminism into their marketing. And so it's
Mm.
usually like looking at like the Dove campaigns and things like that, where it's more just like, women exist and they have buying power. And so we should be incorporating that into our marketing. And that's like not really what I'm talking about. And I think it's on one side, taking that real human centered approach to your messaging, to how you're selling, right? So, a lot of traditional marketing, especially when we think about like social media, it's very high pressure, very, high pressure, scarcity tactics, fear based, like, if you don't buy my program, then you're going to be fat and poor and dumb and single and alone for the rest of your life, right? And so it's really not that in the messaging, but then
Yeah.
also how do we build strategies? How do we build systems that like honor you as the business owner? And when you're a solopreneur, like you're the marketer, you're the CMO, you're the CFO, you're the CEO, you're also the admin assistant. And marketing is one thing on a to-do list that's 1,000 miles long, and we can market our business all day, right?
Yeah.
But that's not necessarily effective, not
Mm-hmm.
necessarily healthy. And so how do we create these business systems that respect us as humans and feel good
Mm.
and align with our values, and
Yeah.
also align with our clients too, and
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
respect and treat our clients or prospective clients or our audience as humans as well.
Mm. I love that. I think that's so important. Just thinking about not only your messages, the ones that you're delivering, but the ways that you're selling something. We can all picture, we were laughing, but it's actually not that funny. Like, we can all picture that sales page that is pressuring you and saying things like, do you not believe in yourself enough to sign up for this? Or, you have to invest in yourself even if the cash flow isn't there. And these
Yes.
messages that really have a way of manipulating people, making people feel small, making people feel pressured. And I think that that kind of a thing is so rampant in this industry. It's hard to feel like it's a choice that we can make to not use some of those tactics. I
Mm-hmm.
was talking about this with someone the other day, and she was sort of saying, sometimes I get frustrated because I'm not willing to do those kinds of high pressure tactics or the salesy, like really loud and flashy things, but it makes me feel like people are not seeing my work or
Mm.
seeing the things that I'm doing because I'm not willing to do those things. And I can imagine that for you and a lot of your clients, that's like a tension point of feeling the pressure to employ these tactics that we really don't believe in at all.
Oh, yes. Like I feel this pressure all the time, Um, like my trade, my education, my training, my career for over 15 years has been in marketing, corporate communications. And so I know a lot of things about comms and marketing.
Yeah.
And I'm a human being who is like trying to do a very hard thing, which is build a business. And
Mm-hmm.
I also face all of the same challenges that my clients do and that everybody does, right? Like I am intimately familiar with that soft and tender place that manipulative high pressure marketing goes after, right? And I wrote in my newsletter earlier this year, I wrote about how I was feeling when like the algorithm discovered that I was starting a business, right?
Mm.
Because as you start building the business, and then like what are the things that you're looking up, right? You're like looking for different software, you're looking for resources, you're looking about like how to build a sales funnel and these types of things. And then suddenly, like all of my targeted ads are like, and it's like, it's comical, right? Because it's like, live launching, like you need to do a live launch to get to your next 100K. And then it's like scroll next, like swipe next ad is like, we all know that live launching doesn't work. What you need is you need to build an evergreen funnel if you want to get to your next 100K, right? And then it's like, oh
Right.
my gosh, like what do I do? Like build a funnel, don't build a funnel. You need to do this, you need to do that. And it's like all of this competing information. And like I launched this business back in the fall, launched it, I would say the launch was great. And then I kind of took a step back because it was December, year end, holiday stuff. And it was like, I was like, okay, I'm going to take this time to work on my business. And that's when I started to just be like inundated. And I bought a whole bunch of this crap too, right? Like I bought all kinds of webinars. I was downloading like every freebie because I really bought into this message that like I was doing something wrong. I was doing something wrong. I wasn't doing it right. Suddenly, the fact that I had 15 plus years of marketing and comms experience, that I had built successful, profitable businesses on my own before, like this just emptied out of my head. Like I had no recollection of this happening. And I felt like I became almost just like frozen because, well, live launching doesn't work, but building an evergreen funnel doesn't feel right to me. So that must mean that maybe I'm not cut out for this, And it's so like, you started, I think if you identify as a slowpreneur, there's all kinds of words for people who are just doing business not in the status quo. Soulpreneur, intuition-led entrepreneur, soulpreneur, feminist entrepreneur, values-led entrepreneur, however you identify, like there is this element of intuition, like you're called to do something, to build something, to make something. But then like the work of building that business, but then the work of listening to that intuitive spirit that like brought you here, that helps you make the best decisions, that when you listen to it, always successful, right? Is a full-time job on its own. It's so hard. And and it's difficult for me too. And I try not to hide that. Like I'm a fellow traveler.
Yeah. I love that you have this motto. I've seen you share it a few times in your work. That's just so good because it's so true. You say marketing feels hard because it is hard. And I just really appreciate you bringing that into the light because I do think that sometimes we've all felt the way that you felt like, oh, I'm doing something wrong. I'm not cut out for this. All of these products are here to teach me the ways of the world because maybe marketing could just be easy if I just had the right message or the right graphic or the right Facebook ad. Maybe then it would be easy for me. But I really like that your approach comes at it from the perspective of like, marketing is hard. Can you talk to us about why marketing is so hard?
Yes. And I have to give credit where credit is due. So if there are parents listening to this podcast, I'm sure they are familiar with Dr. Becky from Good Inside. And one of her mantras is that parenting feels hard because it is hard. And so I borrowed that mantra from Dr. Becky. And
love that.
And like, yeah, it's true. Like marketing feels hard because it is hard. And there are like 1,000 reasons why it is hard. Like we could probably spend the rest of our time together just listing all the ways that marketing is hard. Like, how many ads do you see in a day? Right? Just from like the time that you wake up to whenever you go out into the world, we are just inundated with messages, advertisements, marketing. Then you flip on your phone, you're scrolling through social media, and like literally everything is an ad, right? You're looking at influencers who are like doing product placements, or you're getting literal ads in your feed, or, you know, I'm there selling my workshop. Like there's just so much noise, and like our attention is hard. It's just harder and harder to get people's attention. Right. And I think, in our new normal, post, but not really post COVID, I think it's even more difficult to get people's attention. So like, let's just like, that could be enough to make it hard. Right. But then we also think about like our media landscape is constantly changing, right? The rules of engagement to be on social media change every day, right? Sometimes we don't even know about them. I was chatting with somebody this week about, we're talking about like the olden days of SEO, like back at like 2008 and 2010, and like Google would be making these like huge algorithmic changes, and they would make the announcements 4 months ahead of time, and there's all this transparency around it so you could get ready. But like now they don't even tell you, you know? And like, you know, we all thought that we were supposed to be making reels, and then when nobody's reels were being watched, Instagram was like, oh yeah, we kind of like changed things 2 months ago, and we're like back to the grid, you know. And so like, and so there's that. Right? Like, where one thing works until it doesn't, you know. And then I think if you are a woman, if you are a person of color, if you have a disability, if you're queer, like if you are all of the above, right? There's our social conditioning about how we're not supposed to talk about ourselves. We're not supposed to take up too much space. We're not supposed to have pride in our work, you know, like there's all that messaging. Then we have weird shit around money, so selling makes it hard. And also, like, you did not start this business to become a marketer, right? Like, you are doing your thing, right? You are doing your thing, which maybe you're a great accountant or a graphic designer, or you're a coach, or you're a yoga instructor. Like, I think, you know, marketing always looks easy when you're like consuming it. And I think we have these ideas because, like, well, we can write, we can read, so we should be able to talk about ourselves. But like, marketing is a very specialized skill. Like, I went to school for it for many years, and I have built a career, and I still sit down at my computer every day, and it's hard, right? Even though I have these skills. I have the skills, I understand the best practices. I do it for myself. I do it for clients. I've done it for big businesses. And like, at the end of the day, it's still hard because it's just a hard thing.
Yeah. Thank you for normalizing that, because I think it is something where we feel as though we should be naturally gifted at it. It looks so easy on the outside, as you said, right? We're seeing people and they're putting together these reels and they're so cool. And we're like, maybe I need to learn how to do those skills, or it should feel easier to me than it does. And or we forget that it's something that actually takes quite a bit of time. Like, I have this rule I sometimes tell clients of like, double the time it took you to put together the offering. And that's approximately how much energy you should spend on marketing the offering.
Yeah.
At least, right? Because it takes so much time, and it's such a delicate dance. Not only to show up and do marketing is hard, but also for marketing to work is such a delicate balance. It's like this magical alchemy that nobody fully understands, of what takes someone over the edge of when they're ready to make a purchase or work with someone. It's this very complicated thing, but we have this feeling like, oh, if I were just doing everything right the way that this other person is doing it, then I would be automatically, it's a one-to-one, like my effort equals my sale. And so I think it's just really great to hear you normalize it as somebody with so much experience in this field, as not only is marketing hard in general, it's also really hard to do it in a way that aligns with our values. So
Yes.
it's hard on multiple fronts, right?
Well, yeah. And there's also, I didn't even talk about the values piece, right? Like, so yeah. So add on the fact that you don't want to use like psychological manipulation or lie about,
Mm-hmm.
offers expiring at midnight when that's actually
Mm,
not true and those types of things. Like,
yeah.
that makes it more difficult. And I also feel like it's also challenging to have like real conversations about like what works and what doesn't work, because it's really easy to like, parenting is very similar to parenting as well, right? Like, it's easy
Mm,
to feel shame around it, right? Like, I'm over
mm,
here in my little corner of the internet, struggling, feeling like it's challenging to show up market every day. And like, I feel like that says something about me as a person, right?
right.
And so when I come to you, it's very difficult for me to say that out loud, right? And to
Yeah.
say like, hey, I'm like really having a hard time showing up in my business right now. Or I'm finding it really hard. And because I'm looking at you and like you're doing it every day. And so it must be so easy for you. But probably the reality is you probably are challenged in some way too, but because there's an
Mm-hmm.
element of shame, and like I think it becomes like even more complex when you are running a solo business as well.
Yeah.
Like it I have done enough therapy to know on the surface that like my work and my worth are not correlated in any way. But
Mm-hmm.
when I literally am like my business product, like my brain is my business and what I'm selling, like how can that not feel like it's saying something about me when I put something out and it flops?
Yeah.
Like that hurts. It's hard.
Yeah.
And so then it makes
Mm-hmm.
it that much more difficult to show up the next week or to try again.
Yeah. Because so much about this conversation is about maintaining that momentum, right? Like marketing is so vulnerable, especially in the ways that we're doing it nowadays that really prioritize our faces
Mm,
and our voices and our personalities. Like this whole idea of having a personal brand being something that's so ubiquitous for so many people, in I imagine that in the 70s, if you were like a plumber, you didn't feel like you had to also have like a really kick-ass personality. You were just a
mm.
plumber, not just a plumber, but like you were a
Yeah, yeah.
plumber, right? You weren't also like an influencer about plumbing, which is actually not even a joke. Like I think I've seen a TikToker that's a plumber. So it's kind of like, that used to be kind of, there was a separation there where you could just run your business and in these
Mm,
other ways have it be marketed. And nowadays we feel this really tremendous pressure to not only do the thing but be this personality. So I think when you're talking about the discouragement factor, that's a really important thing to kind of consider. Like it does take so much out of you to show up in a specific way, be vulnerable, put something out there, make offers, show your face, like show your personality. And it can be really difficult to keep going if you
mm.
feel like that thing is being rejected or is not being kind of picked up on in some way. And we know these things intellectually that it doesn't mean anything about us, but it's so hard to separate those things.
Yeah,
It's so
yeah.
hard.
And then going back to, our earlier conversation, that's when you fall into that trap of like, oh, well,
Mm-hmm.
now you need this thing, right? Like you need to change your
Yeah.
mindset, right? Like, oh,
Yeah.
well, you're just not like, you're just trapped in this like limited beliefs. You've got limited beliefs. And so that's why you're not making, you know, X amount of dollars. Like when I was, which, and I mean, we can talk about that too. Also, like, let's talk about how, like, again, the yardstick, or like the, what is it that I'm trying to think about? The finish line, the yardstick is like keeps moving. I'm trying to make a
The
sports
goalpost.
analogy. That's the one.
We're moving the
The
goalpost. Yeah.
goalpost. Like when I first started in 2015, 2016, when I started my first business, the goal um was to have consistent 5-figure months. Nate, sorry, consistent 5K months. That was the goal,
Okay.
right?
Yeah.
And then a few years later, it was like the 6-figure business, right? And then I went and I had a job for a while, so I wasn't doing my own thing. And then when I kind of started to conceptualize slow and steady again, it was like, oh, now the term that people are using is multiple 6-figure business.
Right.
So it's not just about making 100K, it's 2, 3, 500K. And now I see 7-figure business, like, which is wild. Like, that's just wild to me as well, that like, that's the measure of success. Like, would I want a 7-figure business? Yeah, okay, probably. Might be interesting, but like, really what I want is to just like make enough money to like have a nice life and like support my family. And like, I don't know how I'm going to scale my brain to 7 figures, like, and so again, that narrative comes back of like, well, if I'm not, am I not aiming high enough? Am I not ambitious enough? Is it limiting beliefs? Is it my money mindset getting in the way, that like I just have work to do? Like I'm not manifesting enough money. And then it always kind of comes back to just like you not being good enough.
Right. Which that message is there not as an altruistic message to get you, Amanda, to be better. It's there as a message to sell something for somebody else, right?
Yes.
There is a lot of money to be made from us feeling like the goalpost is constantly moving. There is a lot of money to be made by us feeling like, oh, well, I don't have a multiple 6-figure, whatever that means, business. So clearly my goals aren't big enough. And that messaging, I mean, if anyone's listened to The Dream or has studied MLMs in general, like that is very common, right? If you're not getting these results, it's because you're not trying hard enough, you're not working hard enough, you don't want enough. But we have to really interrogate where those messages are coming from, because ultimately they're serving to create income for someone, but it's not you, it's for someone else.
Yeah, exactly.
So it's like so important to kind of be aware of those messages. And it strikes me too, like a lot of those messages are built on very specific, I don't even know if you can call them values, but like, let's just call them values for now. These ideas around scarcity, fear, getting you to feel like you're broken and you need fixing. And I guess it's a bit of a leading question because your business is called Slow and Steady, but it occurs to me that the values that drive your business and your marketing philosophies are based on other kinds of values. So can you talk to us about like what is the alternative to that urgency, scarcity, fear model, and how can we kind of embody those values more in our own marketing?
Yeah. Well, I do think that those are values, and those are values by systems of oppression, like capitalism, white supremacy, patriarchy, ableism, and it's designed to uphold power, right? And a lot of these entrepreneurs that were, I'm sure you have a few in mind, and I have a few in mind as we're talking about them. Like they're upholding those systems, right? It's about power at the end of the day.
And they may not know
that
they're doing that.
That's true.
But if we don't interrogate it, we're all kind of doing that.
Exactly.
By default.
So what is the alternative? What is the alternative? So I mean, yeah, my business is called Slow and Steady. And where that was born from was this idea that when we go slow, then we can stay steady. And that
Mm.
is that centering of the human in your business, that you are a human and you deserve and require care and love and attention, and that you can't fight off these messages, right? You can't protect yourself from the damages of these like scarcity, fear mongering messages, like if you're not steady, right?
Mm.
And so, like, yeah, I could probably follow a celebrity's proven method step by step to, crush my next launch and bring in multiple six figures or whatever. But like, at what cost is that going to be? Because,
Mm.
I built the first leg of I'm 40. I just turned 40. And I launched Slow and Steady like around my 40th birthday. And like that first 20 years of my career was really built on doing the most, right?
Mm.
I had something to prove, and that was that I was good enough and worthy and deserving. And I was first in the office and last home. And I would give 150%. I would go above and beyond. I would say yes, take on more than I could chew, but get it done anyways, consistently delivering amazing work. And like, what did I get out of that? More work. Basically, that's kind
Mm.
of the
Mm-hmm.
that's the reward for being good at your job and for
Right.
trying hard. And um I didn't want that anymore. And I when I was around 30, so my Saturn return, I started to realize that I had really worked myself into a corner of misery. Like,
Mm.
I had all the awards, I had the promotions, I was making a lot of money, I owned a house by that time, all the things, all those traditional measures of success. But I was quite miserable because I wasn't a very good friend or partner or
Mm.
anything, because I was just like working all the time and I had no life. And so that kind of set off a real journey to get back to myself, which is an
Mm-hmm.
ongoing journey. Just because you turn 40 doesn't mean you have it all figured out. But by that time, I knew that like I wanted to work for myself, I wanted to work on my own terms. And I don't want to work that much. Like, it's just not the most important thing to me anymore. I want to
Mm-hmm.
be able to go on my kids' field trip and to take vacations and to not work all that much and do Pilates 3 times a week and be in my garden and just like have a nice life. It's kind of
Mm-hmm.
like what I want out of my life. Um and so that's where the slow part goes in. Like, that's the steady part
Yeah.
and the slow, right? Like, I
Mm-hmm.
don't want to scale up and 10x my income overnight. I want to go slow because I want to build this business on my own terms. And because I'm not working that much every single day, I don't
Mm-hmm.
want to be working on the deck at 11 p.m. The night
Yeah.
before a workshop or those types of things. And so um, that's, yeah, that's my philosophy. It's really about me
Mm-hmm.
and
Yeah.
how I want to work and show up in my business, but then also supporting my clients to achieve those things also.
Yeah. That feel attracted to that
Mhm.
same idea. It really strikes me that, so much of what you're talking about is kind of about going inward and releasing yourself from the noise temporarily, long enough for you to realize what you really want, because it is so easy for messaging to be insidious. And we've just been talking about it, like feeling like our income's not high enough, feeling like, should we be working more, right? Like,
Mm-hmm.
Even as we're saying, like, I don't want to work that much, that's a little bit countercultural, right? I'm sure our society does not love to hear you say that, right? We all need to be good little workers. So it's really interesting that so much of what you're talking about is predicated on knowing ultimately what it is that you want outside of the messaging of others. And then you have to bring that philosophy into the way that you market to others, so that you're not kind of then perpetuating any of these cycles. So I think it seems like when you're talking about your own marketing approach for yourself and for your clients, there's inevitably going to be an element to it that is, we are going to go slower than other
Mm-hmm.
people, or we are going to be less flashy, for lack of a better word. But the reason we're doing this is because we want it to feel like it's possible to sustain for you to stay steady in it over time.
Yeah. And so that's where my philosophy of just enough comes in as well. Like when I'm thinking about marketing my own business, or when I'm sitting down with my clients, we're looking for that sweet spot of what is just enough marketing to help you reach your goals, right? And that, I think, is also a different approach, because we also get this messaging that we have to be like everywhere all the time, all at once. And you need to be across every social platform, and you need a newsletter and a website, and you need to be doing this and that. And, the list seems to get longer every week of what we should be doing. Right.
Right.
Or what is in the secret magic formula to get to all of these big, hairy goals. And so, just enough marketing means something different to everybody, to every client, and at different seasons of your business as well. Like right now, I'm promoting a workshop that I'm doing. And so just enough marketing looks a little bit different than what it looked like last month, when I was in more of a maintenance mode, and I was just, working with clients, and I didn't have a thing. I didn't have an offer, right? And so just enough marketing is really based on, like, first of all, you really need to understand like your business. And that seems so basic and simple. And I think this gets overlooked, or like we really underestimate how important business foundations are. And, to add to the long list of things that make marketing hard, if we have any kind of ambiguity, if there's a lack of clarity anywhere in our business, that's going to make it hard to do marketing, right? If you don't know what you are trying to do, if you don't understand what a marketing tactic is going to give you, you want to launch a podcast? Okay, great. Why? How's that going to get you closer to your goals? What are your goals? Right? What is your business model? What are your revenue goals? I often use an example of, like, and even revenue goals is going to be different for everybody. Like, I often use an example of, like, let's take two different businesses that each have a revenue goal of $100,000 annual. I picked that number because I'm bad at math, right? So they both want to make, not because that is the goal, but because it's a nice round number that I can divide. Okay. Because I am a writer and an artist and not a mathematician. So, so we have two businesses, and one of them is an HR consultant who works with startups, and their average contract is about $25,000 a year. Okay. Somebody else is, I don't know, they're like a floral designer, and their revenue goal is 100K, but their product that they sell is a $25 mini course about how to arrange grocery store flowers into something that like looks cool, right?
Mm-hmm.
How those two different businesses, even though they have the same end goal at the end of the year, are going to get to that 100K is so different, right? Like there's no secret formula. There's no exact system that either of them, like if they follow, they're not going to get those same results, because our HR consultant, only needs 4 clients a year to meet their 100K goal, right? Their clients are direct senior level people in technology startups. And so they're probably not looking for business advice on TikTok, right? And it's like it's a business to business play. Whereas on the other hand, somebody who has like a low priced offer needs literally thousands of clients.
Volume.
And volume. And so how do you market that? Like it's a very different strategy. So what is just enough for our HR consultant is nowhere near enough for what is going to work for the person selling the digital product, right? So understanding your business is the first step. And when I sit down with clients, I'm constantly like taking one step back, like, okay, but why? But what is the goal? What are we trying to achieve? So you're going to launch a podcast. What is that going to do? You're going to write a newsletter. Why? Why are you putting energy into that? Because when a big part of Just Enough is also to like just do what works as well. Like part of my philosophy is like I never want to be wasting time on things that aren't working for me, because that's energy that I could be putting somewhere else. That doesn't mean don't experiment, don't try new things. We don't set it and forget it, because again, remember, there are all kinds of factors outside of our control that are going to pull the rug out from under us tomorrow, right? And so those things just aren't going to work, or just like, trends change, people change. It's just things change. And so we can't just, we can set it and forget it to a point, but there's limitations. There's limitations to that. So, but that also means that we need to have those systems in place to be like measuring and looking at things and knowing. And this ties back to like our business foundations and our business goals too. Like, well, how do I even know that it's working? Okay. Are you making money? Like that's the difference between a hobby and a business, right? Like I'm not just posting on Instagram or making a podcast like for fun. Maybe you are. Then you probably are not interested in this podcast, because this is about entrepreneurship, not hobbies, right? Like there's a difference there. So are you making money? Are you making enough money? Are you making as much money as you want? Like these are questions that we need to constantly be looking at and constantly be checking in on, and being able to measure that. Like how many times do I sit down with people and ask them about their stats and they say, I don't know, I never look at them, right? Like there's a fine balance. Like you don't want to be looking every single day, refreshing every single day, but like you need to be looking at what's working. You need to be tracking. You need to have systems. Like my favorite there's nothing that I love more than the like unique link or like a discount code. Like, you know, I'm hosting a workshop, and so I created a whole bunch of different discount codes that all have the same
Mm,
amount of discount, but I'm giving them out, and I have a different discount code for my social media followers than I do for my newsletter subscribers, than I do for, you know, a networking group that I'm a part of, right?
mm,
Like, and it's the same discount across the board, but I set a different discount code for each of them, and now I can see like where
yeah,
people are seeing my stuff, where people
yeah.
are converting, right? Or like maybe they
Mhm,
need to see it in all these different places, but at the end of the day, they're coming back to the email or they're using the social media code or whatever. Because
yeah.
then the next time I have something to promote, well, maybe I'm not going to waste my time promoting in a bunch of networking groups or buying ads, you know,
Yeah.
because they didn't convert. The only way you're going to
Hmm.
know that is if you set up systems to measure and then if you look. If you look at
Hmm.
them, so
And systems
important.
unique to your own business too,
Yes,
right?
that
Because you've
too.
been saying like it's not about this one size fits all. It's not like yeah, in your great example with the HR and the flower businesses, like their approaches are going to be so different. So yeah, there's not this magic formula, but what we do need to do is gather data as it pertains to our own business, our own audience, our own marketing,
Exactly.
so that we can make better decisions. And I just love that you're talking about asking why. I'm such a questioner, so I'm like constantly, that's one of my favorite questions is why.
Yeah.
um, because I do think, again, with that idea, if we're always looking outside of ourselves, if we're always getting our advice from people online, we're going to think that there's a very specific way that we're supposed to do everything. And we may feel like there are just certain things that are inevitable, things that we
Mhm.
just inevitably have to do. So we need to have a podcast and we need to have a newsletter and we need to be on TikTok and social media and all of these things instead of really analyzing why is that? Like we're creating a causal relationship in our minds. This person is successful and they have a podcast. Thus, if I have a
Mm.
podcast, I will be successful without kind of breaking down why that might be successful for them or what they have that's happening that we do not have that's happening in our own business. So I think that place that you recommend people starting of understanding your own business, your business model, your audience size, you know, your
Mhm.
capacity, all of
Your
those factors are
preferences.
so unique to you. Your preferences, what you enjoy, what you're good at, those things are so unique to you that you cannot look outside of yourself for the answers of what that's going to look like. You have to start from inside yourself and inside the business. It's just such a good point.
Absolutely. And like you ask why, and like getting to because I want to or because I don't want to are also like perfectly valid reasons,
Hmm.
right? Like
Hmm.
the answer doesn't always have to be, well, because that's going to convert, you know, 5% of my email list. Like it doesn't, I think when we think about business foundations and we think about asking the why, I think there's this preconceived notion that there's supposed to be like a smart sounding complex answer
Mm,
to the why, but like yeah, because I want to. Like that, well, why did you take the risk of starting your business if not to do what you want or to
hmm.
not do what you
Hmm.
don't want, you know? I had a
Yeah.
client, I worked with a client this week, and I have a tendency to kind of like poo poo social media because I mean, it's not really for me. Um, but you know, this client does very well on social media, and actually, she
Hmm.
loves to show up on Instagram. She has a very large
Hmm.
following. It has done well for her business, and she really loves it. And we did a 1 hour session, and one of the first things that I asked her, I said, because she had said, like, I feel like most of my strategy has been just like experimenting and seeing what works. And I said, okay, so tell me, like, what is working? And she said she really loves doing videos. She loves being on Instagram, yada, yada, yada. So then we got to the end of our session and I was like, so let's check in. Like, how are you feeling? Like, what's kind of coming up for you? And she was like, I was so afraid coming into this session that you were going to tell me that I like shouldn't be on Instagram. And I was like, why would I ever do that? Like, one of the first things you told me was, I like to do it. You know,
Mm-hmm.
I like to do
Mm-hmm.
this. It is fun for me. It contributes to my business in this way.
Yeah.
So we want to make marketing feel easier. We want it to be more simple. We want it to be fun. Like, why are we going to take away the thing that is simple and fun and easy for you?
Yeah.
Because we should all be writing newsletters because we want to own our audience. Like, that's kind of like a common thing that we hear. Like, yeah, okay,
Mm-hmm.
that's important. But if you don't like writing newsletters, actually, that shit doesn't matter.
Mm.
It's
Yeah.
never going to
It's
work
about
for you.
starting from who you are versus like what you're seeing outside of yourself. But I also think it's so important to ask those questions of why, because yeah, you might get to the answer because I want to, but you might also get to the answer of, well, because everyone else is doing it and
Oh,
I feel
that
like I
too.
should,
Yeah.
in which case you're able to kind of differentiate what is a valid why and what is a why that maybe needs to be explored a little bit further.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. I hadn't, another great example was another client that I worked with. And when we first sat down, her goal for our session was she wanted to monetize her podcast. And we were going to come up with a strategy and a plan on how to monetize her podcast. And this is like the most fun thing for me is like when I can kind of like start to see like between the lines, like where things aren't kind of
Mm.
like adding up. And she had this podcast and it was like kind of taking off and it was doing really well, tons of downloads, really great. So now she's like, yeah, I should like be monetizing this podcast. And as we're talking, she's like, so yeah, like I want to bring on sponsors and I want to start making money. And then I was thinking I could do events and I could do retreats, and the template, right? And
Mm-hmm.
at one
Mm-hmm.
point I was like, so do you want to do that? And she was like, no. Like,
I
actually,
just like the podcast.
she has a separate career. And where we came to was like, her podcast is not a business for her. It's a hobby. She's not trying to, she's trying to make money. Like, she needs to make some money to pay for production costs, right? But she has a full-time job that she loves. And she is saving to like buy a cabin off the grid to like live in a tiny house with her partner when their kids are like in university. And like throwing it all away into Podcast Inc. is not going to get her to those like big audacious goals, right? But she started to feel this pressure that like, okay, once you start to build momentum, it's the sponsorship and then it's the events and the workshops and building the community. But then once she had a chance to kind of untangle some of those threads and to start listening to that part inside of her, she realized like, oh no, actually that's like not for me. That's not what I want to do at all.
Yeah. Yeah, it just strikes me that like we have these feelings of what comes after. You said the word the template, which I
Mhm.
just loved. And it just is so important for us to remember like nothing is inevitable. You don't have to do anything just because something's working or not working. There aren't these immediate answers or paths that then have to open up. It's a constant process of checking in with yourself. What feels good to you? What do you have the capacity for? And, that's hard to do that. I think that's probably why she was so happy to work with you, of having that mirror, somebody who could ask her, like, what do you really want? But it is something that we just have to really practice. And I love that that's like such a core part of your marketing philosophy, because it really does occur to me that our marketing is not going to be successful in any way if it's based on other people's goals, other people's values, other people's ideas of what success looks like. It's just not going to work. So like, what's the point of wasting the energy on it?
Yeah.
Well, Amanda, this has been such a great conversation. I love hearing your philosophies. I feel very inspired by them. And I also feel very reassured by them, in the sense of it reminds me and reconnects me to what is actually important. What do I actually need to do? What is like the minimum viable amount of just enough marketing that I can do? That's going to be different for everybody. And just kind of reminding me to tune in with myself rather than looking outward all the time. So thank you for that. And if you're okay with it, I want to do my relaxed responses with you. I have 4
Oh,
questions that I
yes.
typically ask everyone. Always the same 4, and no need to rush, but we just want your kind of first reaction.
Sure.
Okay. So the first one is, how do you take your tea or your coffee?
Okay. So it's complicated. if I if I am ordering a coffee in a coffee shop, then I will have a vanilla oat latte,
Ooh.
often decaf as well, because
Mhm.
this is just me high on life. I don't need any more stimulation. So I don't have a lot of caffeine. And I really long to replicate that, what I call a baby's coffee at home, because it's basically just a hot cup of milk with some vanilla, a little sweet. I really longed to make that at home, but barring investing hundreds of dollars into an espresso machine, where I have landed is Chemex coffee,
Okay.
2% milk in my Chinya milk frother from Amazon. It's like $49.99, with a little sprinkle of cinnamon on top. And that'll get me close to where I want to be. But it
Oh, I
has to
love it.
be 2% milk. Like oat milk, nut milk of any kind does not work. And then 3% milk also is like, I guess, too heavy for the milk frother. So it must
Yeah.
be 2%. Yeah.
I love the amount of detail that's happening
Yes.
in the answer. So good. So good.
Hey, I'm
Okay,
going
next.
slow in the morning, so I have time for
It's
the
good.
coffee.
Yeah, I love it. The next question is, what is the best book you've read lately?
Romantic comedy by Curtis Stinfield. I think that's how
I
you
cannot
say
wait to
their
read
last
it.
name. I devoured this book. I had been on a reading slump for months. I devoured this book. It was so funny. It was so good. I loved it. There's like a COVID bit in it. There's like
Mm.
COVID in it, which was weird. And at first I was like, I don't know if I'm ready to go back there. But I'm really glad that I did, because it is just impeccable and such a good read. So much fun.
That is amazing. She is actually one of my all-time favorite authors, and I didn't know that she had a new book coming out, and I was at the bookstore and I literally gasped when I saw it. I was like, my partner was there with me. He's like, what's happening? So if you haven't read any of her other books, highly recommend. She does not miss. Like, everything she's
Well,
written has
I
been incredible.
hated the Hillary Clinton book.
Okay, that is the one I haven't read.
Like,
Rodham?
yeah, I
Okay, that
hated
is
it.
the one I haven't
Now,
read. Good to know.
I did only learn that Curtis is a woman very recently. So I
Okay.
hated So I thought it was even stranger that it was a man writing a fictionalized event and like some sex scenes between like Hillary and Bill early in their relationship. I was like, this is
Mm,
weird. And it made it
yeah.
10 times weirder when I thought it was a man. But now that I know that Curtis is actually a woman, maybe I would revisit it. But I'm very excited to dive into what would you suggest? Like, what should I read next from them?
When I was in university, one of my favorites was Man of My Dreams.
Mm,
That one is really good. But American Wife is really good. I think it's a fictionalized portrait of Laura Bush, is I
mm,
think my
mm.
memory
That
serves,
sounds familiar.
but it's like really good. But all of Sisterland was great. She has a collection of essays, You Think It, I'll Say It, that were really good. That anyway, everything. I love them. I
Yeah.
love them all. Okay, great answer. Gonna read it hopefully soon. Okay, this one is one of my favorites. Where is your favorite place on earth?
My home. I love
Ah,
being at home with my family with nothing on the agenda. Just, yeah, I
yeah.
really like being at home. We've lived here for 11 years and
Okay.
no, 12 years. And last year we just renovated it top to bottom. And so every inch is exactly the way I want it to be now. And it's just designed so I never have to leave.
Ah, I love that. I love that so much. Okay, and then the last question is, what is something that you would like to get yourself as a gift, and or if you are the kind of person who gets yourself gifts as soon as you think of them, what is the most recent gift you got yourself?
Okay, I'm definitely that person. Um, I'm definitely that person. Um, and I don't have anything really like that exciting. Like,
It's okay.
I bought a lot of new clothes, spring
Mm,
clothes. I feel this urge to like make over my whole wardrobe right now. I feel like this is the roaring 20s moment that we all thought we were going to get in 2021, where it's like, okay, I'm kind of like going out into the world. I'm starting to see people again. I'm like emerging from lockdown times still in
yeah.
2023. And I feel like I need some clothes. So I've been buying a lot of
Mm,
spring clothes. Kind of a boring
that's
answer.
fun. That's a fun one. Yeah,
Yeah.
I like
A
it.
more fun book is I also bought this Prism Oracle deck, but I
Ooh,
haven't tried it yet. But it's
pretty.
tap into your intuition with the magic of color.
I love that.
So I'm
I'm such a fan of
very
color.
interested in that.
Oh, cool. That is a great gift
Yeah.
also. I love a new deck. Okay, and then where can people find you, Amanda, if they want to stay in touch? What are you working on these days? What are you excited about?
Yeah. So I am at slowandsteady.studio. That is the website URL. I have a very complicated relationship with social media. So sometimes I'm there, but mostly I'm not. So the best way to find me is through the website and to sign up for my newsletter. I send out a newsletter every Friday, most Fridays. And that's where I share, that's mostly where my content lives. And I share some of my own personal reflections on building a slow and steady business, but also some like actionable tips. And um, that's where I put the good memes too. So find
Yeah.
me over there.
Well, we got to have the good memes. So that sounds amazing.
Yeah.
Very cool. I can't thank you enough for your time and for sharing your philosophies with us. It was just such a cool and inspiring conversation. And I feel reinvigorated around my marketing as well. So thank you.
Incredible. That's the goal. Thanks, Stephanie.